Today, I want to talk to you about by far the most profitable part of the TSX, the best part of the Canadian stock market, gold. Gold has been killing it in 2025. Gold has outperformed Microsoft, outperformed Nvidia, Apple, doesn't matter. Gold is winning, and gold stocks have started to really take off. The question, of course, is there still value in this trade? And that's been the question for months. So today I'm going to look at that question. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to see what's happening right now, what's maybe happening in the next couple of months. How are some shorter term events going to have longer term impacts on the price of gold? And how does the price of gold have an impact on our favorite gold mining stock? So let's start off by talking about the gold story. I've got an article here from Yahoo Finance. Really interesting. Several key points that I want to point out to you. The gold story, the sort of super cycle we've seen in gold has been absolutely knock your socks off incredible. No questions about it. But it is very logical as well. Gold has been a historic source of value. I mean, we store value in gold constantly throughout human history. With gold being such a stable source of value, the more unstable the world gets and the more unstable the financial situation and the fiscal situation of the world gets, the better gold does. And that seems to be sort of the trend over the last 2-3 years here. Really what we've seen is a couple of things going on. First and foremost, gold prices are beating basically everything. I've got a chart right here that you see. Like, look at this. Just last year, start of last year, we're at $2,000. Right now, we're at 36. I remember when we broke into the 3,000s, people were questioning, like, man, no way this goes higher. We're at 36. We might break 4 before the end of the year. Insane. This is meme stock levels of performance. And a lot of this has been driven by central banks. Central banks have the kind of money that nobody has. And really importantly, this is something that I saw on BNN, and I thought it was a really valuable message that really sort of helped me reframe how I'm thinking about the situation. Central banks are not traders. They do not swing trade. They make a decision, a well-researched decision, and they stick to it for what seems like an obnoxiously long period of time. Think about the mindset people had about the Federal Reserve not increasing interest rates back when inflation was crazy high. And now think about the same mindset that people have so frustrated at the Federal Reserve for not decreasing interest rates. The Federal Reserve is a slow moving body, and so are central banks around the world. They move slow, methodically, and they keep on the path. So the gold trend of them buying gold is going to continue. Beyond that, we also have some short-term events going on that are really impacting the price of gold. And it comes a lot from the central bank of the US, the Federal Reserve, because everybody thinks they're going to cut rates now. And this is hardly cutting into a position of strength because they're not cutting rates because inflation's gone, which is what maybe a lot of us would have loved to see. But they're cutting rates because employment is far worse than what was expected. We've seen all sorts of drama about this in the US. I mean, people have been arguing back and forth, and it's not like we're doing much better up here in Canada. I mean, employment here is still terrible, right? We've seen, and like localized into some areas. I mean, we don't talk about this much on the channel, but there's some parts of Canada that are seeing brutal unemployment. Obviously, the Canadian interest rate is already much lower than the US one, but still, cutting rates make sense to try and get at least a little bit of life into the economy here. Now, with the US cutting rates, we could see an uptick in central banks buying into gold, but also I think there's a whole different level of investor who's about to start shifting their perspective. Now, this investor is probably going to move into dividends. I think that's a pretty safe bet, and I think it's going to benefit a lot of our stocks that we talk about on the channel, but they're also going to move into gold because people have been using US treasuries as a source of stable, value held. They're using it as a source of like low but stable income, right? That everybody knows what a fixed income investor is like. Money's going to move out of the fixed income markets when interest rates go down, though, and at least some of that money is going to move into gold. If you're looking to protect your value, there's almost no better option. I mean, gold is beating Bitcoin. That's crazy, right? Like, that's not something that should be happening. So, of course, what exactly should we as stock market investors do about this, right? We see the price of gold going up. Am I telling you to run out there and buy gold bars? Not really. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And they even sell them at some Costco's, which is just a incredibly novel concept to me. But I think there's a better option. That better option comes from gold miners. And of course, if you watch this channel for any length of time, you'll know our favorite gold miner here is Agnico Eagle. And that's hardly a hot take. Everybody loves Agnico Eagle. I actually think they've become the name brand in Canadian gold. I don't think they're second place to Barrick anymore. I think they are on top. I don't think anybody else competes with them when it comes to sort of investor recognition, the amount of investor sentiment, the bullishness. And that does come with a premium. But it also, I mean, like, look at the performance of this company, right? I've got an article here. We're going to just look at some of the highlights of this article because it's really interesting. But they've killed it in 2025. Like I said, they're outperforming things like Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, right? All these big tech names, yeah, who have fantastic profits of their own. These guys are beating them. Their profitability is going just wild. Share price is on the way up. And the production is just like at the top end of the range. They're producing at a high level. They're just killing it. All right, we look at them. They're outperforming GLD. They're outperforming the gold shares ETF. Right, they're outperforming the SPY by a wide margin. This is a year-to-date chart as of publishing, so it's a couple days old. But I mean, look at that chart. Right, clear outperformance. This isn't a surprise. Everybody expected this. We talked about this last year. We talked actually about their existing outperformance months ago. We basically had this same discussion about, is this going to keep going, months ago? And that's how big this trend has been, that it's defied expectations for months on end. And at some point, if the trend continues to destroy our expectations, maybe we need to shift those expectations, right? The actual goalposts need to move because gold is not going to come crashing down. Gold is not going to go back into the $2,000 range. Like, that's just not going to happen. There would have to be so many other things going on in the world for us to suddenly see gold prices drop like that. It's not reasonable. And because of that, these companies are never going back to the levels of profitability they were at a year and a half ago. If the price of their main commodity is going to live at an elevated rate for the foreseeable future, then why would their stock prices go back? Why would they go back to the same market cap? Why would they go back to the same valuation? Why would they go back to the same lower multiples? Their profitability has exponentially increased as the price of gold outpaced the price of production. Why would they go back to the levels they were at, right? Some outlook things that are really interesting here, right? They talk a lot about one of the things, anytime you're talking about a mining stock, it's like, okay, how much are they producing? Are they actually hitting that number? How are they operating? Are there any sort of big events going on? Think about QB for tech. We talked about that, right? Tech Resources obviously has their own storylines going on right now, but they were producing this material. They had this challenge at one of their biggest projects, and it had a massive downwards impact on the stock, despite the price of the material not changing in the same direction, right? Copper didn't dramatically drop off a cliff the same time that QB did. But obviously, there are production challenges. You're taking a risk buying into a commodity producer that maybe they don't produce it as well. Luckily for us, Agnico Eagle is an absolutely fantastic producer of gold. And they produce it in what I consider to be one of the safest and forgive me for saying this, but one of the best investable areas right now, which is Canada, right? Obviously, super biased here. That's what we talk about on the channel, but I think Canada is a great place to be from a regulatory perspective, from a safety perspective, right? We can argue that it's slow to get things done, but once you have them done, it's a great place to operate. Obviously, they've managed to just continue to beat guidance, right? We're looking at the guidance, we're looking at the ratio, just absolutely awesome. Right? Gold prices keep going up. Net margins are still going up. Right? Just look at these things. Look at look at their realized gold price. This is insane. Look at that Q2 year over year change. That is like $1,000 difference. That's $1,000 difference. And their actual costs change by a couple, like, what is that? $40, $50 per ounce. That is crazy, right? So just insane, right? That's $960 of profit an ounce extra year over year. And as we continue to go through this, the real question becomes, as we look at the profitability outlook, we look at the signals, we ask the question of what's next. I think the answer is simple. As long as the gold price does not come crashing down, these stocks are going to continue at these elevated levels. They will continue there until such time that they can no longer produce at the same rate, they can no longer produce at the same low costs, or the price of the commodity falls. If you believe, like I do, that gold is not coming back down, there's no reason not to hold a gold mining stock. Now, I'm not saying we're going to replicate the same couple 100% gains that we've seen. But normally you're not hunting for a couple 100%. If you're looking at diversifying your portfolio, you want to own some mining, There's no reason not to own something like a high quality gold mining stock like Agnico. Now, if you want to capture value, if you're trying to, you're going after some stock price gains, the smaller the name of the stock, the less likely it is that they have been priced accurately. I think that's a vast overgeneralization, but essentially in a mining market like this, the smaller the name, the more junior you go, the more likely it is that the market doesn't understand how good the value of that company is. And you likely see huge re-ratings anytime they announce earnings, anytime they have some sort of big news come out, because the market doesn't follow them the same way that they follow these larger cap names. Agnico Eagle, while it's not necessarily priced for perfection, right? There's still room for this thing to run. It is definitely priced well. Junior miners, who knows? Wild West. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a couple 100% in a shorter period of time, good luck. I really hope you find the needle in the haystack, right? There's obviously some names in there. You can go for like more middle of the road. You don't have to jump all the way to junior miners. You can go for something that's like not a second tier, maybe that's a mean thing to say, but a smaller tier of producer. All right, as long as they operate well, you can still capture a huge amount of stock price gains as bigger investors that are international, learn more about them. But a lot of that story has started to play out already. So now you're just asking the question of where does gold go? And honestly, as much as maybe a couple months ago, I wasn't confident about this. Now I'm confident in saying that this thing is going to keep going up. US dollars lost 10% of its value this year alone. If you are a foreign central bank, why would you hold US dollars as your main source? Right? If there's a whole narrative of devaluing the dollar to pay off the debt, why would you have that as your main reserve? Right? You're going to go to something that's a safer store of value. You're not going to be going to equities. You're unlikely to look towards European or Chinese sovereign debt, right? There are some options that you can look at, right? You're going to go to gold though. At least a chunk of that money is going to go to gold. And again, central banks move slow. They're going to continue to make the same decisions again and again and again, because that's the direction they're already going in. It's more of a train than a sports car, right? They don't accelerate fast. They do not slow down fast. They just get to speed and they keep trucking along. And that's what I think the gold price is going to do. I think we're likely to see this thing in the fours. I know that's a crazy thing to say. I think it could happen this year. And again, that's insane to think that a commodity is hitting those kind of record prices, even though the general commodities index is nowhere near as popular. But I think gold is going to keep going up. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. I'm really interested. I really do want to see what happens in the near term with central banks. Are they going to cut rates, or is the Fed going to continue to defy the call to cut rates? Really interesting storylines that are going to play out in the not so distant future. Is Canada going to cut rates? Right, that's obviously important for us as Canadian investors. Right, it kind of shuffles around the board. There's all sorts of other stocks that will come into play that we'll talk about here in the materials sector. I want to talk a little bit more about mining beyond the gold sector, but man, you can't fight the profits, guys. Like, the momentum is here. This is the part of the market where investors want to be right now. And sometimes you just can't fight momentum. If the river's flowing, just float along. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you like what we do here on the channel, please subscribe. And I hope I see you in the next one.